Hello, everybody. Welcome to
Yeah.
today's Black Hills Information Security Webcast. Today, we have our friends from Datadog joining us. We're going to talk about the new expansion deck of Backdoors and Breaches. And if you don't know what Backdoors and Breaches is, we got a slide for that. And then we also want Datadog to introduce themselves because you may not know who Datadog is. And so if you don't, let's go ahead and get started. All right. So joining us today, we have Andrew Krug and Kennedy Toomey. Toomey or Tomey?
To me.
Toomey, and Deb Wigley here from the Black Hills team. So who is
Mhm.
Datadog? Andrew, who is Datadog?
So Datadog is a company that's been in business for over a decade. Traditionally, we have been a logs, metrics, and monitoring observability company. For about the last 5 years, we've also been making a comprehensive suite of security products that cover everything from standard cloud-based SIM detection type stuff to endpoint, all the way up through application security and like shift left developer stuff. We also recently have entered the large language model and AI security space.
Okay. And so what happened was Andrew saw Deb and I at Wild West Hack and Fest Denver, which if you haven't been to Denver, come join us. If you haven't been to Deadwood, come join us. And Andrew was like, Datadog like to make expansion deck. I'm like, okay. So he explained how the process works. And Andrew and his team worked together to create all the things that you're about to see. And then Deb and I made sure that it doesn't break the game and that everything works with the core deck and that it all makes sense. And so what you're about to see is that. So we're not really talking about how to play backdoors and breaches today. We have videos for that. You can find those videos on YouTube. You can go to backdoorsandbreaches.com. You can see the how to play backdoors and breaches. So what we're going to do today is actually go through what all the attack cards are in the Datadog expansion deck, how you can utilize them in your own scenarios, or how you can blend them into playing backdoors and breaches. And so if you're like, well, what is backdoors and breaches? It is a game that we created to help do tabletop exercises, incident response tabletop exercises, and teach people cybersecurity. So backdoors and breaches is taught, and I think over 100 different universities and colleges. There is a like an actual research paper that was developed on the effectiveness of backdoors and breaches in the classroom, which was like so scientific. I was like, oh, okay, that I never thought a game that we created would be used in like a scientific research paper on its effectiveness in the classroom, and yet it was.
Did
So
do we know
that,
what grade they got? I never like followed back and like how they did.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe.
we did reach out to them. They're
Yeah, we
really cool
did.
people. All right.
Mhm.
So we're not talking about how to play, but if you want to know how to play, there's videos on how to play. What we're going to talk about today is, oh, well, also there's the free version of play.backdoorsandbreaches.com. We don't want you to buy anything. Like the goal here today is not like, get on down here to Backdoors and Breaches and buy yourself an expansion deck. Like that's not the point. The point is that this resource exists. It's there for you to learn and it's there for you to do tabletop exercises and it's completely free. Thanks to a friend of ours in the community, Richard Fong. He developed the first version of the online version of Backdoors and Breaches, and since then we've kept it maintained. So whenever we develop a new deck, it's there. Whenever we have any other cards that we create, we put into what's called the mega deck. So it's every card we've ever created, and so you can use that to essentially mimic the TTPs of any APT group so that you can have the most robust tabletop exercise you can possibly imagine. All right, moving on. It's also available on GitHub. So if you don't want to use the version that's online, if you're like, secrets, then you can go ahead and download all the resources, take it into your own infrastructure and use it that way. And you can also reconfigure whatever you want to do with it. And if you want additional features, request additional features. If you want to change the way the game works, change the game the way the game works. It's up to you. All right. And yes, it is available in our online store, Datadog, the expansion deck, if you want to buy physical decks. Plus, we have the playmat. If you want to use the playmat where you work, you can totally do that. I'm not here to sell you anything, but it is available if you want that. All right, all that's out of the way. Andrew, Kennedy. So normally we tell people, please, for the love of God, don't create extra detection cards unless it is absolutely necessary to your expansion deck. And so as we were going through developing the attack cards, it did become necessary for us to create new detection cards. And so, Andrew, if you could talk through each one of these cards, give like a brief reason for its existence and why it's in the deck, and then we'll continue to move on. And then, and I wanted to show the detection cards first because when we get to the attack card, you'll see that these new detection cards are listed on the attack cards as a way of detecting that type of attack. So Andrew, go ahead and get us started.
Yeah, so just to set the stage here, the team that I manage at Datadog, we largely work with cloud-based attacks. So a lot of what we're going to talk about is related to how do we detect things in the cloud, and how is that different from detecting on-prem? And then, just why would you use all these crazy things? So starting at the left there, we'll start with the application runtime analysis card. Application runtime analysis, well, it doesn't apply to only cloud specifically, is like a really important part of analyzing just like what's going on inside the application runtime itself, which is really relevant in cloud. Because if you think about a scenario where you're running like 10,000 nodes or something like just massive scale, you need a way to be able to kind of laser focus and triage what's going on what specific endpoint in the application runtime at any given time. I'll just pause there in case you have a follow-up.
Nope, you can keep going.
Okay. The second card is cloud security, information, and event management. So that's a traditional SIM. The difference here is that this is actually positioned for cloud. And there's already a SIM card in the regular core backdoors and breaches deck. But what is unique about this card is it actually can detect things that are cloud specific using enrichments about the cloud environment on data ingest. So that's what makes this one particularly unique. Then the one on the right there, brand new class of tools that just sort of evolved in the last 2 or 3 years. And anybody that's taken a cloud security class, offensive or defensive, knows that identity and access is one of the biggest risks in cloud, right? Overly permissive roles, all kinds of things. So CIEM, pronounced Kim, because we already had a SIM. I blame Gartner, not me. Is the tool that we use to do that. So Kim, in many cases, creates a graph database of the relationship between identities, scores those, and allows people to dive deep into what the specific risk is for various roles, users, groups, access keys, etc.
Yeah, I remember the first time you mentioned this card, and I was like, okay, how do you pronounce that? Because if you notice on the card, we literally say pronounce Kim. We didn't do that on the SIM card because
Sime?
Sime? Seam? Anyone that goes, oh, the SIEM card, and I'm like, whoa, okay. So the same thing here with the Kim card is like we wanted to go, this is how you say Kim. So,
Yeah.
because and we really did debate for a while. You're like, do we need a cloud SIM card? And we like keep asking the question, is this necessary? And over time, you're like, yes, it is necessary. And so that is why it's in the deck, because over time, you're like, okay, because what happens is like, Andrew and Kennedy have to explain to Deb and I why this should exist. And as we were listening, we're like, and eventually, okay. All right, that does make a lot of sense. All right, moving on. Next card, we have 2 more detection cards, right, for a grand total of 5 detection cards in this deck. So we went from like no detection cards to like, but we need these 5. And we're like, okay. So take us through what these 2 are.
So starting on the left there again, the workload protection card really represents an agent that runs on cloud endpoints, sort of like an EDR, and there already is an EDR in the core deck. But what's different about this is workload protection has context about cloud-specific things like the IMDS server, the temporary credential vending on the box itself, process information. Obviously you get that from an EDR, but the way that the data is enriched again is differentiated from what you would see in an on-prem. And so that's what makes this detection unique. On the right here, we also have SBOM analysis, which did not exist at all in the deck. And I think that that is incredibly relevant, right now for the time period in terms of just finding where a vulnerability is present in your environment. Because Backdoors and Breaches is a question asking game. So for us, as we put these cards in the deck, it was really about what questions do we want to drive in the group of folks that are trying to solve the problem.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Backdoors and Breaches is really good at revealing what you do know and what you don't know. And for you to go like, well, what is workload protection? Especially when we're playing with college students and others when they're new to cybersecurity and they're like, what is a software bill of materials analysis? And you get a chance to like dive into what this is or what, those capabilities are. So, all right, now we're going to dive into attack cards. So we're going to go through these are the new initial compromise cards. And so to set the stage, the red cards are the initial compromise cards in the deck. There are four types of attack cards. There's the initial compromise, the pivot and escalate, the C2 and exfil, and the persistence cards. And so we ask the teams whenever we're developing new expansion decks, like you can make any combination. And if you think there's a more initial compromise or if you think there's more pivot and escalate, and it's really like, what do you see, Datadog? Like you get to see a different part of security than the rest of us do. So what are you seeing, Datadog, that makes you want to create these cards? And so a lot of these came from the cloud. I think most of them came from some kind of cloud. But also, just for you to know, we go through a lot of revisions on these descriptions to make sure that you can understand what this attack is with the least amount of words possible. And so as we work through these, like Andrew and Kennedy, why did you include these cards and what do they do?
So I'll just say like a lot of the cards are actually based on the research that we do looking at customer environments and what we actually see in the wild. So a lot of these cards have corollary links on the bottom that are related to research that we published on Datadog Security Labs. And we do a couple of interesting things. We do research reports on like kind of trends in the cloud. And then we also do a roundup of the threats that we're seeing quarter by quarter. And so the compromised single sign-on federated identity, this is just phishing a set of cloud credentials. So any sort of workflow that would be start with a traditional phish and then steal a bit of session information from a user. The one in the center here is actually based on a body of research that was done by Seth Art, one of the researchers at Datadog, who looked at the entire supply chain of like where the machine images come from, and like how we could backdoor accounts in different ways using some facilities in the existing supply chain. And then at the right here is just like a standard compromise of a cloud native serverless function.
All right. So when we're looking at these cards and getting the descriptions, we also have the detections, like what can detect this type of attack. So those either correspond to the cards that are in the expansion deck, like we just mentioned, or they come from the core deck. So the goal is here, the Datadog deck blends in with the core deck, and so that you can pull cards that you want to use to teach people what you want them to learn, uh, based on like, well, what questions should we be asking here at where we work? All right, next set. What we got?
The next set, another one that's cloud specific, has to do with the way that third parties and external accounts gain access into environments, which is a common pattern that we see in cloud incidents, which is that a lot of folks don't understand transitive trust. And I don't think this is a cloud specific thing. This is also like an Active Directory thing. If you've ever worked with like multiple Active Directory forests or domains, the middle one there, more on the AppSec side, GitHub Actions that are compromised. So everybody's building things using managed builders of some kind. GitHub Actions are just one example, not to pick on that, but those things are compromisable. And then on the right there, taking it all the way down to something that's really application specific that we see a lot is actually backdooring packages in the software supply chain itself.
Yeah. And when we're developing these cards, the goal here is not to be like theoretical. It's to be like actually seeing these things in the wild. So when you come up with these cards, like how recent are these types of attacks?
So everything that we've talked about and everything that we put in the deck is like within the last 12 months of the body of research that we've looked at across like all Datadog customers and also beyond Datadog, just like in the wild in general.
Okay. I remember like when you mentioned like confused deputy attack, I was also confused because I don't know what a deputy is. And so I was like, what? Is this real? Every once in a while, I wonder if the team's just trolling me and like it's a confused deputy attack. I'm like, okay. Wait, no. All right. All right, we have two more. initial compromise cards. So take me through what these are, and that's a lot of words on the second card. But what are these? Why they exist?
You want to take us through these two cards, Kennedy?
Sure. So this first one, cloud application compromised, is pretty self-explanatory. An application that is running on the cloud. It does have a CVE in it that allows the attacker to execute arbitrary code, which is not good as someone is able to run code in your environment that was not authorized. And then this next one, expose cloud credentials via unauthenticated Kubernetes dashboard. So a lot. But what this is that someone gained unauthenticated access to the API of the Kubernetes dashboard, which then allowed them to launch workloads and access data.
Yeah, and if you all notice, we put as many tools on the cards as possible for you to understand like what tools could be used to do these types of attacks. And so if there's ever a tool that you've never noticed before, or you never thought about that being used as a way to do this attack, you can. And then if there is a GitHub repository or something where you can actually go and continue to get those resources, we do list that. And when we make the online version available, a lot of times those are clickable because I know you're like, how can I click a link on a physical card? And so we do the best we can to make those clickable. We're working on a new way of doing the website where you can go and get all the tools in one place, but we're not there yet. But we will be soon. If you're watching the recording, we might be done with that.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to the next set is this is the pivot and escalate card. So once the initial compromises happen, the attackers are in, they gain a foothold. Now they're trying to go from one system to another and escalate privileges. And so we have these right here. So what are these and how do they help the attackers get from one place to another?
Yeah, I can go ahead and take this one. So the pivot and escalates in cloud are really, really interesting because they usually involve exploiting some other service to do something on your behalf in a way that was unintentional. So credentials exposed in a storage bucket is the first one on the left there, which is a common pattern that we see is that S3 is one of those services that lives on the edge of the cloud. So somebody can just drop a set of creds in there, whether they're long-lived or short-lived, and then pick them up any other way that they would like. The one in the middle there, instance takeover via user data, is one that I talk about with folks all the time. Specifically, like this relates to when something scales out inside of a cloud environment. There's a little bit of scripting that runs on every node every time a server system is stamped out. And monitoring changes to that script is not something that is super prevalent as a best practice. So folks will use that to backdoor nodes almost in real time. And I love this one because if the IR team cleans up, you have a way to continue potentially even to use that as persistence method. And then the one on the right there, Kubernetes service account privilege escalation, is really just taking advantage of credentials that are mounted inside of a container in a Kubernetes cluster to do things that were unintended. So obviously the identity and access management problem, not just unique to cloud service provider credentials, it also exists in the orchestrators as well. So we wanted to highlight that.
Cool. And for those of you that may find typos, just go ahead and throw the typos into the chat. Not all typos are typos, but we do want to see what you think. If you're watching the recording, I guess you could leave a comment. For the most part, we caught everything, but in case we didn't,
Yeah, we caught everything.
Yeah.
I refuse to believe I'd missed something.
Yeah, if you
There,
ever
there
wondered,
was a good question in here about like playing this with execs, and maybe we could talk about that at the end of the session if we have time.
Okay. Yeah. So historically, playing with executives, you just pick more of a initial compromise that's human-based attack, and then the rest of it can be technical. So that way you can show off your technical expertise. But you start off with a human-based attack like social engineering, a phish email, trusted relationship, something that they can wrap their head around. And then the rest of it can be incredibly technical if you want to. So that way they can get a chance to see how your team works with like this is why you asked for that equipment. This is why you asked for those tools. This is why you asked for that training. This is why you asked for those things. And so the senior leadership can go like, oh, that all makes sense now. But you start off with a scenario that's more around their world of like, uh, I was, I was, what I was gonna say was something about their 401k plan, and then I was like, nah, let's not do that. All right.
Mhm.
All right, so continue on. Pivot and escalate. What do you got here?
IMDS access, which is a common one that we see. So if you're familiar with the Capital One data breach, for example, that's probably the most uh, public IMDS attack that exists. This card is meant to bring awareness to the fact that the old version of IMDS that was the root cause of that has been superseded for about 10 years now. So we've had a mitigation for that for like a decade, and people should really be applying that. The one in the middle there, credential store compromise. Oftentimes, again, we see overly permissive roles that give people access to credentials in the cloud service provider environment. They use those to pivot and escalate. The next one in line is IAM policy abuse. So again, this is the notion that attackers have incredibly mature tooling to take advantage of issues with IAM, including things that work a lot like Bloodhound for attackers to be able to analyze what is their fastest path to admin given any initial foothold in the environment.
My main takeaway here right now so far is CloudFox seems like an important tool. Is listed on all three cards.
It's almost like this was written by one of the creators of CloudFox.
You know what you could use? CloudFox. All right. Where could someone find CloudFox? Would that be available on GitHub?
So CloudFox is a tool, and there's also a complement project called CloudFoxable. That's a simulated vulnerable by design environment for folks to learn how to use CloudFox.
Okay.
CloudFox is available on GitHub from a company called Bishop Fox.
Okay. So thank you, Bishop Fox, for releasing that tool. Yeah. All
But
right,
the
moving.
creator of CloudFox does work at Datadog.
Okay. All right, persistence. All right, so the attacker got in. They moved around using pivot and escalate. So if you're thinking through how backdoors and breaches works, it's like the game Clue. Did anyone here play Clue? If you played Clue, go ahead and put your favorite Clue GIF into the Discord chat. If you're watching the recording, that doesn't make any sense to you. But Clue, I recently watched the movie. Fantastic.
So good.
I had not watched the movie when I was younger. I thought I'd watched the movie because I'd seen parts of the movie like my whole life. Just like I recently watched Godfather for the first time because I thought I'd seen The Godfather because it's been around for so long. But I was like, wow, this movie's long and good, but it's long. And then I watched Godfather 2. That was like 12 hours of my day. All right. So the attackers get into the initial compromise, pivot and escalate, and now there's persistence, right? Like the ability to keep getting back in, the back door, and so what we have here is the persistence cards. Walk us through what these cards are and why they exist.
So these are important because attackers want more information. Once they're already in the application or in the cloud environment, they want to keep exploiting it and gaining more information from there. So the first backdoored container image is where they essentially have access to the container images. So they go in there, they modify them, they edit them, and then with that, they add a malicious code or malicious execution. And from there, every time someone uses that container image, that malicious code is executed, which just keeps spreading their attack. The middle one, which is additional credential creation, is where the attackers create a set of credentials for themselves. So essentially, it's acting as a user, but they then have another way to get back in the system as that new user if they lose access to the first set of credentials that they had been using. And then lastly, we have our cloned Kubernetes credentials, where the attacker will actually clone the privileged system accounts, and it will do that specifically with the long-lasting credentials. So they can continue using those and continue exploiting the Kubernetes instance that they're using.
All right. So someone just put in the chat that Clue came out 40 years ago in 1985.
Yeah.
Which means in 1985 would be like watching a movie from 1945. Anyway, I'm fine.
Yeah, we're
Mine's
we're really dating ourselves here. I have a slide in the cloud security class that has a GIF in it from Home Alone,
Mm,
and I have now started to encounter generations that are not aware of Home
yeah.
Alone.
Oh no.
Yeah.
We
I
haven't we haven't done well, guys, then if we haven't passed that on to our children.
yeah. One of the reasons I stopped teaching film school was because my students hadn't seen Top Gun, and I realized there was a generational like gap. And I was like, I will not suit you well by staying here. I'll just keep teaching you the way we've always made movies. So, all right, all right. Last persistence card. What is this? Why does it exist?
So this is kind of a complicated one. So I'm happy to talk through all the nuances because I got a good spiel all lined up. So one of the things that is interesting about roles, particularly in the AWS cloud, is that they have two things. They have permissions, which dictate what someone can do in the cloud environment, and then they have a trust policy. And the trust policy is the terms and conditions under which someone can assume that role. And if you don't know what a role is basically just like a hat that you can put on that gives you temporary superpowers in a cloud service provider environment. So the trust policy says when someone can put on that hat. And the back door is that you give permissions to an account that you as an attacker control to be able to come in and do that. So you can actually go in from a position of privilege and you could backdoor all the roles with your own account ID if you want to. This is also something that is infrequently monitored as a change to the IAM policies because the CloudTrail event that's generated for that update is a different event than just updating the regular policy.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you look at this, we have a debate of like, do we list AWS? Do we list Google Cloud? Do we list, a specific service? And so we did AWS, and then it might get fixed. It might. But for the most part, what we're hoping you do is you take the cards that make most sense for your organization and you build a deck out of those cards, and then you play using those cards. So you can use all the different expansion decks. You're like, that one works for us, 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 and then put that deck together. And then when you're playing, you and your organization are like, well, this is very specific to us and it makes sense to us. So that's one of the reasons that we continue to make expansion decks with friends like Datadog and others, because we know that we didn't get them all. And Datadog gets a chance to see security differently. Huntress gets a chance to see security differently. Others get to see, security differently. And so together, hopefully we're hitting everything that's possible out there and that you may come across. All right. So speaking of which, C2 and exfil, this is how you do command and control and exfiltration of data. And so what is this? All right. So take us through these C2 and exfil. This is the exfiltration of data or the command and control network traffic. So what do we got?
The first one is kind of fun because it's just using the tools that exist on every server system, every container, every serverless function in order to do more bad stuff. The center one is using, this is a favorite of mine as a red teamer or threat actor in the environment. Because there are ways to lock these things down. They're just not locked down by default. One of the more fun things you can do is you can take a snapshot of a set of data. And then instead of looking at that data in the compromised account, you can replicate that to an account that you control. And then you can kind of go through it at leisure because it's moved beyond the scope of the person that you're exploiting. On the right there is using SAS tunneling. VPN as command and control. So this would be things like Tailscale, WireGuard, log me in as a potential back channel because this both, depending on the environment, could look totally normal and not be detected.
Is that all of them? Sorry.
That's all three.
All right, I got distracted. Apparently, we're in a flood zone and we have to evacuate by 2 p.m.
Well, just
Eastern
our
time.
cars need to be moved. That's all. So we're gonna
Okay.
people move them.
All
That's
right.
Is this like tsunami related? Was there
No.
another earthquake?
No, not tsunami
No,
related.
where we're at is Old Ellicott City, and it floods pretty frequently. So
Yeah.
Okay.
It was
it's fine.
essentially built by people who were like, this is a great place to put a town. And
They
then
built
when
it
the-
over 2 rivers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's anyway.
And then at some point, the weather changed. All right, so inject cards. If you never played Backdoors and Breaches before, an inject card happens when you either roll a 20 or a 1, or you have 3 unsuccessful rolls in a row. All right, so you roll a 20, a 1, or 3 unsuccessful rolls in a row, and you're like, why are you rolling dice? Well, you roll a dice to see if your detection works or not. And so during the game of Backdoors and Breaches, you say, hey, I would like to use this detection, see if I can find something. And you roll the dice, and if you get a 7, that was an ineffective roll. And so you have to talk through why didn't that work? Either politically, financially, technologically, or personnel wise. Why did this detection not work right now? So sometimes you roll 20 and it did work, and you now have an inject card that creates chaos in the game, or you roll 1 and it did not work, and you have an inject card in the game, or you roll a 1 on your third roll and you get 2 inject cards because it didn't work and it was your third roll. And so now you have a whole lot of chaos. And so we asked the Datadog team, like, hey, give us some chaos in your world that you thinks would make sense to people who, deal with this on like a daily basis. And so we always say the inject cards can be a little snarky, a little fun, a little tongue in cheek. And so what they're going to do is we're going to show you the inject cards that are in the Datadog deck and explain why you wanted to put them in here. Also, they have some kind of modifier to them of like what happens if you use this card, or what happens if this inject card gets used. So what do we got here?
So starting on the left there, we have undocumented APIs, which if you are a reader of Datadog Security Labs, you know that one of our researchers, Nick Frechette, finds these all the time in the AWS cloud. And these result in all kinds of interesting things. Oftentimes, like a logging bypass. Sometimes it can be privilege escalation. So that's kind of a fun one that most customers really don't think about. The one in the center there, attacker stops cloud logging. This is something that is easily detected, but not everybody has a detection for it. So you choose a defender to skip 2 turns. And then on the right there, we decided to give folks a +3 modifier for any cloud security training.
Yeah. So sometimes and when we say chaos, it creates uncertainty in the game. Just like any incident response, there is uncertainty during it. And so just like people in the chat are saying, we currently have a flood watch. Is that a card? It kind of is. In another deck, we have things like natural disasters. One is where a bear attacks a power
Bear?
station.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. And so the power station goes out due to a bear attack. Not a Sasquatch. Bear.
Yet.
Yeah. All right. So we got 3 more. I think then we have 2 more after that. So take us through these inject cards here.
So the first one, the IMDS V2, is being used. This has a pro where you get to go celebrate eating pizza because you have upgraded from version 1, which, as Andrew mentioned earlier, was vulnerable and fixed about 10 years ago, give or take. So again, pizza party after you finish, which is very exciting. The next is you use the supply chain firewall, which is an open source tool that Datadog released back in November that reduces the likelihood that your developers are compromised by a supply chain attack as it checks any new dependency that is being downloaded on the machine, just improving overall supply chain security. And so the incident commander has to reveal the persistence card. And then lastly, we have the public storage bucket exposed. That is where the service bucket was misconfigured, which is never good. And it does contain PII, which means thousands of your customers' data was exposed. And so you do need to play the crisis management card, which then you get to decide whether, or you get to roll. So if it's successful, you can move past it. If you're not successful, you receive a -2 modifier for the rest of the session.
Yeah. And what we're really hoping that the inject cards do is create that conversation where, like, if you wanted to, you could treat backdoors and breaches as flashcards for you and your security team. And like, are we vulnerable to this? Are we vulnerable to this? Are we vulnerable to this? And then when you get to the inject cards, you're like, have we looked at this? Have we looked at this? Have we discussed this? Have we looked at this? Right. So the goal here is like Andrew said earlier, it's a question asking game. We got a review on like an actual game website. They're like 3 out of 5 stars. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
Very
well,
fun.
yeah. I mean, if you gave it to a couple of teenagers that did not care about cybersecurity, they'd like, this was okay. Thank you for
Yeah.
backdoors and breaches.
I
But
shuffled it and then I was confused.
yes. So the last inject cards here. What do we got here?
So the first one, pretty long, an exposed software as a service or SaaS application programming interface, API. So essentially an exposed SaaS API key during a public presentation. So someone's giving a presentation, they're showing all these cool things they've done, but wait, they forgot to remove the API key that they used. And while this stinks, accidents do happen. And what happens when someone exposes the information accidentally? So the incident captain must draw an additional pivot and escalate card. And then the last one is a third-party code library compromised. And this is awesome because the developer proactively ran Guard Dog, which is another open source tool from Datadog, and they were able to see that a Python library was flagged as malicious before they even implemented it into their code. And so this means the defenders got a +3 modifier for the SBOM card for the remainder of the session.
Yeah. And also for some clarity, like when we, Black Hills, a company reaches out and says we want to make an expansion deck, we do not charge anyone to make an expansion deck. We don't like say, well, it's going to cost this much and all these things. Like that's not the point. The point here is to create additional cards for the community to use in the game because the more cards that exist, the more beneficial it is for everybody. So it's not something that we charge. And one of the things that we do is we ask, like, do you have open source tools? Do you have things that are for the community that they can use to benefit their own security? And so thank you, Datadog, for like finding those resources or having those resources available to be able to put into the deck for people to be able to like, I can use this, or I could use this, or I could use this. So it was really good working with you guys. We have one other slide here, but two, and then we got questions here at the end. But where are you going to be next? Where are you going to be giving these cards out at?
So the next time that you'll be able to find the card decks will actually be at Forward Cloud Sec EMEA. So if you happen to be in Berlin on September 15th and 16th and want to swing by, we'll have a bunch of the decks there available. Where to find us next is actually, you can find myself and Kennedy and Christoph and Seth, actually. So like every single person that worked on this card deck will be at Black Hat USA and DEF CON next week.
Yep. Also, if you're at DEF CON, you'll see Deb and I, along with the rest of the team, will be at DEF CON. We have an exhibitor booth, and then we also have a vendor booth for Record Comics. So come say hi. And then let's go ahead and wrap up with questions or suggestions. Suggestions are always good. I've been actually looking through the chat and saying, like, what about this card? Or what about one of these kind of cards? And consulting cards for sure. Definitely want to make more consulting cards in the future. And we're currently getting ready to release the new competitive version of Backdoors and Breaches, which is coming at Wild West Hackenfest in Deadwood. You'll get a chance to get the starter pack for being able to play competitive Backdoors and Breaches. And then we're going to launch a Kickstarter for that afterwards, just to make sure that we're not printing more than we actually need. Because if there's like 100 people want it, we're like, okay, we'll print like 300 decks. But if 10,000 people want it, then we'll print 13,000 decks. All right. So,
Yeah.
all right. So questions and suggestions. So I have a question for Andrew. When you were demoing this the first time at the Datadog event, like what was the feedback from people who actually got to play?
I think so. The first time that we ever played this in person was at Datadog Dash, which is our largest user conference of the year in June every year. And the largely attendees of that event come from engineering personas. Like they're not security all day, every day. They love security and they care a lot about security, but it's not their bread and butter. So we got to see lots of aha moments from folks in terms of just like understanding what the cloud attack surface was, but then also lots of surprises in terms of how to detect that and how Datadog in particular was able to detect those things.
Yeah. And then Kennedy, what was what do you feel like was the most difficult part in developing the deck for us or for the expansion deck?
Almost narrowing down what we wanted included. I think we had a lot of cards and we kept having to cut and cut down because there are just so many cool things that we are able to detect or we've done research on or we have the open source tool for. So I think we had a lot of ideas and we slowly had to narrow them down.
Yeah. I think one of the things that happens when Deb and I are part of the process is that every time you mention a new attack, there's a part of me that goes, damn, right? Like another, like seriously, like
That's a
right.
thing. Yeah.
So Andrew, the longer you're in security, do you see more problems becoming do you see us securing things more or like the attack surface getting bigger?
A little bit of both, right? So I do think as a culture, we've got better at observing and detecting some of the anti-patterns, but we're still kind of unraveling culturally what it means to fix those things. And that's a really long road. And then when you take something and you drop it into modern engineering, like large language models, agentic workflows, that kind of blows the doors off the environment for the first time in a long time, all of a sudden we increase the surface area of that risk. But really what we tend to see is a lot of the same patterns of attacks over and over, and attackers are just getting more sophisticated and finding nuanced ways to exploit the same old stuff.
Yeah. Someone asked a question, have considered running this as a replacement for IR simulation. Um, so is that something, to the community, have you been able to successfully say to your organization, hey, we want to use backdoors and breaches as our, yearly tabletop exercise, and the organization say yes? Normally what happens is that Deb and I do free demos for organizations, and they're like, hey, can you do a free demo for us? And it takes a little bit of us showing you how to play, explaining how to play and how to use it before organizations go like, oh, this makes sense, because they see the word game and they go, well, if it's a game, it can't possibly do the thing to help us. So Andrew and Kennedy, now that you've played the game, do you see how it can be used in tabletop exercise? I guess that's a loaded question, right? It's a little bit of leading the witness. But Kennedy, how do you see backdoors and breaches now that you've learned how to play it, you've developed a deck for it? How do you think organizations can use it?
I definitely think it can be part of their tabletop exercise. I think it's a great way, depending on what tools you have available, to actually, especially with the Datadog expansion pack, but even without it, to be able to think about different attacks and how they are persisting and how they are doing C2 and exfil. And I think there are things where it's hands-on, it's very collaborative, where it's not just one person kind of leading it. It's very much a discussion-based game, which I think is great for a tabletop exercise. And I do think you can use real world examples. You get to create the scenario. So if you create a scenario that is possible for your company, I think it would definitely work.
Yeah. And I don't know if I'm sharing this right now, but can Andrew, you released a gameplay guide. Am I sharing? Yes, I am sharing it. Can you explain this? Because when you showed this to me, I was like, I kind of wish we had this.
So Kennedy is actually the author of the gameplay guide, and I'll hand it off to her in just a second. But one of the things that we're going to commit to as part of continuing to evolve and run programs with the Datadog expansion deck is sharing with the community the scenarios and the prompts that we write up. Because it's like one thing to come and hear it from us at a conference. It's another thing to be able to take one of those decks home and play that with your team using the same prompts and instructions that we give to people.
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as I saw you do this, I was like, why haven't we done this. And we will at some point.
Yeah.
We have people in the community like Robin has definitely helped us. There's other people who've submitted scenarios over the years, and so at some point, we'll get all this together. But thank you, Datadog, for putting this together because it definitely inspired our team to go like we can do this too. So the scenarios down here. So take me through like your first scenario. I know the words are here, but you put the cards down. Uh, what is your favorite scenario so far using the Datadog expansion, Andrew?
So I really particularly like scenario 3 here. The CI/CD pipeline was compromised. So I think that there is like a big trend in security right now that is just like, if we could put more guardrails in the CI/CD stuff, we'll just eliminate all the threats. And a lot of people don't think of those things as increasing their attack surface. And CI/CD pipelines as an attacker are there. It's a pretty juicy target, right? Because it's going to have access to do all the administrative things potentially in your environment. So just like kind of breaking that down and understanding the risk of the things that aren't in the cloud environment, but that are cloud environment adjacent is a really fun conversation to have with people, because you start to see the look on their face when they realize they have all this additional surface area that they need to be logging, monitoring, detecting, and alerting for.
Okay. Yeah, someone reached out to us recently that they developed their own LOM for backdoors and breaches where they fed, I don't know, all of our blogs into it or something, and then I don't know. We have a meeting with them real soon, but it will help you figure out how you want to develop your scenarios. So I haven't seen it, but I hear it's cool. Someone asked the question, is this specifically for the Datadog expansion deck, or is this for the overall gameplay of backdoors and breaches?
So this is we've included scenarios that include cards that are from our expansion deck, but the scenarios do include cards that are from the core deck, because we can't tell the entire story, obviously, without cards from the core deck.
Sure. Awesome. All right. Any other questions that you saw, Deb, that we haven't hit on?
One that we get once in a while, and this is just specific to backdoors and breaches, not necessarily the Datadog deck, but is how to play if you're just one person.
Oh, yeah.
People that don't have a team to play with, and if they could use AI to be maybe the incident captain. Do you guys have thoughts on that?
I wish I did.
Go to a conference and make friends.
It wasn't designed to be a
Yeah.
one-player game. It was designed to be in your organization, talking to other people, and then working through all the different things that can happen. Now, the competitive version is a way for you to play versus a person, but you still need a person. So you got to have people in order to play back. We recommend 2 to 7. So at least one other person, right? The incident captain plus one other person. And then we really recommend up to 7 players on the defender side. You don't want to go more than 7 players, like players, right? You can have spectators, but you don't want to go past 7 players, because then people hide and they just don't answer. And so unless you're an incident captain that's constantly like, what do you think? And then pointing to the person who's been quiet the whole time, then people will be quiet. They'll just listen for other people to answer. Can someone make a TTS pack for B&B? What is a TTS? What does TTS stand for? It's one of the reasons we spell out all acronyms and backdoors and breaches.
Everything. Yeah, everything. Yeah, yours is the most wordy deck, I think, just because of spelling out everything.
Put $1 in the acronym jar.
Someone says they don't understand why it hasn't been made into an app so you can group play from phones. It's because it's us. It's a small, it's like really is a small team. Backdoors and breaches is a small part of what we do here at Black Hills Information Security. So if you're like, why don't you have this? You're like, it's because
actually, there is someone who's working on it. That's maybe in the works for next year.
Yeah,
maybe.
We did send someone to GDC, the Game Developers Conference, for the very first time to like actually look around and go like, who can we find? Who can we find to make this? All right. Also, the tabletop simulator is a version. It doesn't have all the decks. So
that's TTS.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that is the TTS.
Yes.
Tabletop simulator.
Yeah. So yes.
Somebody actually recommended a talk from Kennedy in the chat as well.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Kennedy, where can folks find you next week?
I will be at the Diana Initiative And then I will also be at Black Hat.
Yeah. Someone asked the question, are we going to see Backdoors and Breaches in the Futurist comic? So I'm going to answer that by saying we give Backdoors and Breaches cards to the writer. The writer uses the cards to understand cybersecurity to the best he possibly can, and then he incorporates the attacks into the game or the comic book, The Futurist. So if you ever see like and one of the cards, he was like, "This is a data historian attack." And I was like, "Where'd you figure that out?" He's like, "It's from Backdoors and Breach." I was like, "Okay, all right, just double checking that you're just not making this up." All right, so that is where it comes from. Andrew, where can people find you next week?
So I will be everywhere all week next week. DEF CON, Black Hat. I'll be around B-Sides, Las Vegas as well. So pretty much anywhere that there are Hacker Summer Campy things, you can find me. We also have a Datadog happy hour that folks can register for specifically if you want to do all the Datadog things. And that is at a place called Toca Madera.
That sounds made up.
I can't help the names of Las Vegas restaurants. It makes no sense.
All right.
I'll be there 7 full days, so arriving on Sunday and leaving on Sunday, which is just a lot of Vegas.
Yeah. It sounds like a mythological creature that may or may not exist. Took him
Bring vegetables and water.
For DEF CON or to the restaurant?
Just in general, anywhere that you're gonna find me. If you could just bring like a sprig of broccoli or something.
Oof. It's gonna be great. And don't forget to shower. Yes.
Sometimes 2 or 3 times in the same day.
Yeah.
All right. So as we wrap up here, Kennedy, any final thoughts?
It was just a lot of fun creating this expansion pack. This was also my first time actually playing the game once we created the expansion pack. So I am now a convert. I like the game. It's a lot of fun, and I hope to play it again.
All right. Deb, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. We really enjoy doing this. It does take a lot of our time. It takes more time, obviously, on the team that's creating the cards themselves, but we get to hang out with these lovely people for about 20 hours over the course of what, 3, 4 months. And we have fun. We just become new friends or better friends than we were. So we really enjoy doing this. We actually have 3 more in the works, possibly.
Wow.
So we get tired just thinking about that, putting it on the schedule, but we do enjoy doing this. So thanks for trusting us, and yeah, we'll see you guys next week. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Andrew, final thoughts?
Come see us next week. And if you can't see us next week, come see us in Deadwood, South Dakota. There are an incredibly limited number of tickets left. So do snag those early if that's what you want to do in October.
My final thoughts are you joined us for a Backdoors and Breaches expansion deck webcast, and I greatly appreciate that. This game was created back in 2019, and when we developed it, we had no idea if anyone would actually play it or if it would be effective or useful at all. And so the fact that you're here learning more about it and learning more about how it can be used in your organization astounds me greatly. So thank you so much for choosing to learn about Backdoors and Breaches. Thank you for using it. If you are in Discord right now and you want to get the role for Backdoors and Breaches, just put BNB into the chat. We'll make sure that you have the role that unlocks a channel for you that you can talk more about Backdoors and Breaches. And it also gives you access to a discussion or like a video chat where you can play Backdoors and Breaches. I think Nerf in the Discord server wants to start running games. And so the more that you want to use it, if we can create tools for you to do so, we'll do that. And thank you so much for joining us today. That's it, Megan. Go ahead and kill it with fire. Kill it.
Bye, guys.
Kill it.
Kill it.